Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. Yo, we got 37 gigs. Oh, we got all types of stores today. Oh, you can be talking, but yo, we got, oh, it's already 15 hours. We got things to do. Um, Blessings are said already. This is a sneak preview notes of something that is being prepared amidst assignments that are being delayed. Um, it's the evolution of our collective work, our collective trot, our collective vocation. Vocation ain't no vacation; it's all vocation. Um, so it begins in the beginning. There is a tree, heaven and earth. Tree goes from the rootedness of the circle closest with the bright light, and the tree proceeds a pathways, branching in the polarities that reach to the furthest lights. That's the one family tree of Earth. You know, this is not supposed to be poetic. Uh, it's supposed to be informative. So, we're working on the delivery of this. So, I'll just share the gist. Um, through the years, through the decades at this point, and even through the generations, there is this endeavor of village, intentional village, sovereign intentional village, network of villages, networks of villages, a lot of resonance, a lot of dissonance, a lot of obstruction, and further, a lot of adjustment, a lot of study, and trials, tribulations, and Gumbaru. So all that being said, where things stand at this moment. One is that with Sangha Yosef Rastafari and Nasona Ashram, what we recognize as our state in life, first of all, I'm getting up there now. There are many things that I'm able to do that others would have to take a long time doing. So there's certain benefits in that. There's certain things that I used to be able to do comparatively briefly, expediently, but takes longer for me now. And there's no reasons why that is. Even just like mentally, I'm like the body of a man has its peak around mid-20s, late 20s, probably, maybe, depending on the dude. In terms of the mind, I'm about at the peak stage of the mind, generally speaking. The peak mind tends to be around maybe late 30s, all the way to like the mid 50s. When you look at CEOs, leaders of big things or whatever these days, that tends to be a thing because it takes to the 30s or something to kind of calm down, to get some knowledge, and to be able to. It takes, obviously, it's a lot of education, a lot of preparation, a lot of study, and formal education for many stops at 18 or 21 or 25. That's when the formal education stops. But at the same time, there's still you still need to have some life experience, and you got the tools, you got the blueprints, but you got to like get into the field and experience oneself, and then process and learn oneself, and study, keep on studying. So that takes a while too, getting that experience after 25 to the point about 35, having life experience, family responsibilities, and additionally, and then like making decisions about how much you want to go into the game, and further. And so by the point about mid-30s thereabouts, that's when the mind of a man particularly is like reaching its peak, and it's like Okay, we got the skills, we got nice at it. Like we don't have to think about it now. It's second nature to us, and we're able to do it like intuitively. We got it. We in our program, we in our discipline. We know the things that work. We don't have to think about this too much. We can teach. We know that we can teach younger kinfolk this, that, and the other. We're still learning, and we gotta fend off competition and everything else like that. So and threats and everything. So that becomes like proficient around that age, 30 something or thereabouts, and from there, it's levels about how much one delves into the trot or whatever, and then at about 55 thereabouts, and again it varies by kinfolk. That's when things kind of like slow up, and it's like okay, not and to be honest, I have yet to reach that, but what is observed and what is experienced is that it's not necessarily the mind um, decreasing, but it's just like the earthly mind decreasing in terms of being fast and responding to like the young bucks who try to challenge all the time and everything else like that. Just like with the body, like the strength is gone, but you still like you can still handle like the big young bloods because you know the techniques or whatever. So anyway, the spirit mind kind of like becomes increasing at that age, generally speaking. So all that means, say, wow, that was supposed to be a description of how. What was I talking about? Oh, am I higher up there than I thought? Um, I was talking about village. Um, wow, there's a point to this whole thing. We might have to wrap this up quicker than usual because it's already too way out there. Um, Point is that we've gone through this evolution of the villages, intentional villages, sovereign villages, all the villages. Um, oh yeah, that reminds me of a quote. Um, so where we're at now, I was talking about doing some studies. I was getting to the point of, I'm actually getting to the point of what one of the assignments I'm working on right now, which is world civilization. Let's talk about the timeline before looking at the paths and the migrations of communities for hundreds of years and seeing patterns within that. Just kind of like primordial, like patterns that are common through all these different groups that abstain from even interacting directly with each other, but do very similar things, and gleaning the lessons from that, learning from that. So one of the histories that we look at, one of the paths that we look at, it's continuing, is that of the Cree, one of the native tribes of this continent, further west and north from this location of Ohio, the Great River. And it's the Turtle Island Lakes. How about that? How about that? The third of, actually, the fourth. What am I talking about? The fourth in the lineage of the Turtle Island Lakes. And if you look at like the lakes can actually continue further north towards the land of the Inuit and Aleut. However, anyways, the point is Cree, and that's actually the settler term for the collective of kinfolk from the region of the woodlands and migrating further west. Point is that the methodology of organizing amongst the Cree kinfolk, is the best I can do at the moment, is something that is further resonant with what our experience is at the moment. And the way what is described is how Cree, a few hundred years ago, had the practice of cohabiting as in lodges along. There's migratoriness, but there's also stationary residences as well. But basically, two families that were closely related with each other or involved with each other would cohabit in the same residence, and there's protection and collective work in that experience, and so that is called a lodge, the English word for it. And then there would be a number of lodges that would reside with amongst each other, so like tents, teepees, and otherwise. So it would be a group of a few lodges, with a few families in each lodge, and then that group of lodges being called a band. And so that band would either be stationary with each other and help with the modest agriculture initially, but particularly hunting and gathering and further. And when there's migratory patterns and migratory practices, then the band travels together with each other, and the band makes decisions. There's the clan system amongst all the bands, politics and traditions, but each band has its own autonomy to make decisions for itself, and is close knit in supporting each other. So there's a strong allegiance and priority within the band, and then further political cooperation amongst the collective of bands, particularly amidst other tribes, and additionally, again, each band having its own political autonomy. And a family could leave a band or leave a lodge at any point, has that prerogative, but it's serious because then where are they going to get the support? How are they going to be secure? And additionally, and so that's part of the implications. They can go join another band and further, but that requires negotiation. And the implications of excluding or excommunicating a family was very serious because of that. And so that was always very solemnly deliberated. So that's the culture, and the reason why it resonates with us at this moment, given where we are amidst. I mean, first, the whole clans of the native kinfolk is something that's very resonant, because it's that balance of masculine and authority and feminine authority. And so we work on finding a practical methodology of continuing to implement, to return into this experience of clan and tribe amidst the experience of the post-republic civilization. Um, and but the thing is, like, particularly in a multicultural sense, like the whole endeavor of numbers, like dealing even with like 50 families or 100 families, extremely difficult because people today are very conditioned towards individualism, and it's not just like an opinion in that people can let go. It's so infused with people's being. It's very difficult to find that compromise in a very close way, to be able to live together in an apartment flat, or to live together as a even apartment building, and like share money and like share a bank account and everything else, have that type of trust. Things, people are so, by and large, very extremely severely individualized to be able to readily and fully thoroughly trust each other beyond trust in the systemic way of doing things. And that's the necessity, to have a trust within each other that's greater than this trust within the systemic way of doing things. um, but it takes doing, because people have so much motivations of betrayal and everything else like that. So the prospect of encouraging and organizing 50 families or 100 families, which seems like so easy to do. A school has 200 families, 1,000 families, so why can't just a congregation has 50 families, 20 families, easy. um, 50 families, 100 families, easy. But at the same time, recognize that many of the congregations of the different denominations do not live together. And so, and there's reasons why that is. So that prospect of organizing 50 families, extremely, it's very challenging. And when we look at intentional communities and these cultures of people who do leave and do like cooperate with each other, oftentimes it's somewhat questionable kind of ethics or questionable kind of cultures. Oftentimes there's some kind of sexual indulgences and hedonism involved. And so there's like what a question about what people are getting themselves into, and then once getting involved, like what's the ability of people getting out of that afterwards, and then being proceeding in a viable way, compared to where people were before that. So those are some of the concerns, and in order to, very often, typically, to be able to like do something of that nature, of being independent from the systemic way of doing things, or the typical systemic way of doing things, it requires some numbers, of getting some, pooling some resources together. And so, anyways, all that being said, when looking at the example of Cree, hearing that story, the prospect of cultivating that type of cooperation amongst just 2 or 3 families is much further resonant and accessible, plausible, foreseeable, and to consider, okay, with 4 families, would can four families secure a building, an apartment building together, to have a domicile, and then from that, like a campus or an area around the apartment building to have agriculture or other kind of services. So that's what we look at the moment. And again, this is a continuing, evolving um, endeavor, and it's been a long time to the point and that's what I was talking about in terms of my age, in terms of like all these big ideas and all this change, this and this. Yo, at this point, I'm set in a certain routine, and I've been getting away from that routine this past year, by sharing these types of joints. But like 20 years ago, when I'm pushing 30, it's easier to say big ideas and, oh yeah, we can do this, without seeing the details of it, without like for telling and for planning all the details to make it happen. And because just, well, we had the general outline and we got energy, and so let's just we do it. And that's part of the challenge of being educated in a conventional way to work in a big machine, but then when actually putting together the ideas and plans, not having the big machine, and it doesn't work the same way. So it's a little bit challenging in that respect. However, the basic methodologies of navigating through convention are similar. So anyway, we see this example of two or three families as a lodge, and we see the endeavor, or the example of a few lodges banding together as a band, and we see that as increasingly feasible, plausible. We think of specific kinfolk. And in that process, one of the benefits actually through the years is that we've arrived at our spiritual path. We're very, very peaceful and just very established within our spiritual path, religiosity, and without trying to convert anybody else. And in our spiritual path, for the duration, we emphasize and we prioritize ethics that are universal amongst all the different traditions. So when we look at this endeavor of lodges and bands, and in working with families, it's the same premise that we shared before about different families from different backgrounds being able to live together, but sharing these higher principles. So that's the same as what we've done before, but the big thing is just the smaller numbers. And then with that, concentrated, it's easier to cultivate agreement and cooperation amongst three families compared to 100. And then with those three families, like prioritizing, saying, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Yeah, you're a Buddhist. Yeah, you're Christian. Yeah, you're Jewish. Yeah, you're Muslim. Yeah, you're Hindu, and yeah, you're Taoist. Yeah, you're Native. Yeah, you're African. Yeah, you're European. Okay, that's a lot of families right there, but some may be mixed. Let's get together and now let's get a building. How do we do that? Okay, we have some knowledge. We can negotiate and further, and so that's the element. And then again, in that negotiation, secure that facility, so that again, just the very basics of our domicile, a place for our women and children to be safe and secure and comfortable, our elders to be safe and secure and comfortable, our men, our youth, are vulnerable, are strong, to be safe, secure, and comfortable. And that's the foundation. Now we're ready to like build legit. Now we're ready to hold classes legit, and be safe, secure, and comfortable in sharing the classes and inviting people to participate in those classes, and worry less about being threatened, perhaps even being stigmatized and otherwise, but to simply just relax and receive the knowledge that we share. And that's the service that we provide. That's the exchange. We provide a service of culture, education, healing, diplomacy, that benefits the well-being of the life around us, within our neighborhood, within our society, within our world community. And that's legitimate. It's thorough. It's valuable. It's even lightweight, lucrative. It's not a point of making money, but it's valuable. So with our domicile established by the grace of the Most High. It's a matter of having a space for a school, and other services along these lines as well. And that is increasingly plausible with two, three families as a lodge. It's increasingly plausible with a few lodges together as a band, and with each family having the autonomy of leaving it at some point and arranging it in such a way where people are genuinely supported, and there's viability within the band and there's viability outside of the band whenever any family has that inclination of making that type of transition. So without hate, it's all okay, cool, and welcome back when there's that readiness as well. So as I said before, what we see, particularly with ourselves in terms of Sangha Yosef and Rastafari and the trial we are in, and essentially what this endeavor of the bands, lodges, bands, and villages is establishing a new Varna within world civilization, a Varna somewhere amidst the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins. Ming Tzu calls it the scholar sovereign, and then we add an element into that scholar sovereign vernacular, which is the Kohanim, which comes from the Hebrew Israel, which is priest. So the scholar sovereign priest, and we study the schools of the earth. We study the house of wisdom. We study the house of knowledge. We study the library from Alexandria. We study the academy from Greece. We study the halls of learning within Timbuktu. We study the conversations of the Brahmacharya in India. We study the conversations of the scholars that walk the paths of China. We study the schools, and where some study like the wars and the kings, we study the schools and the kingdoms that emerge around the schools, the migrations, the innovations, the ideas and the inventions that shape civilization. That's what we study. So it involves somewhat of connecting the dots, but eventually in this craft and in this vocation, the lines become blatant and blazing. So anyways, that's what we study, that's what we practice, that's what we teach, that's what we share, and it's valuable for those who are ready for that, without trying to sound condescending, without trying to be condescending. So that's what we exchange. That's what we share and exchange. Now, it's likened to, well, I'm not going to say that right now. So in terms of, what we do is, I have to write this down. So how does this? I mean, might sound just like another type of eccentric endeavor of imperialism, but what we recognize is that it's actually further. And again, this is applicable to all different religions. But what we are sharing, in addition to this, like this Varna, which is applicable to all the different traditions. It's not specific to any particular tradition. It's a phenomenon. It's actually. It does emerge from the paradigm of the modern republic. So I guess this is the post-modern republic epoch. That's probably the appropriate, further accurate descriptor. So this notion of again, it's ancient. The scholar sovereign is an ancient practice and concept, but what we also specifically acknowledge and draw from is the experience of the distinction between the Kshatriya and the Brahmin, and as it's practiced within the United States paradigm. And as much as we malign, or we don't malign, we acknowledge the atrocities that are committed intentionally through the U.S. Constitution and by happenstance through the not by happenstance but intrinsically from the U.S. Constitution. There are benefits that are gleaned, and one of those is the distinction between religiosity and governance, and through that, the ability for different religions to coexist with each other, um, and share in a governing methodology, um, that's applicable to all the different religious communities. Now, it may that ain't nothing new because hello India. However, uh, it is somewhat unprecedented just because it's the happenstance, or it's just the phenomena in context of world civilization and the migrations to this hemisphere, amidst the conflict that exists in the eastern hemisphere, precedingly. So, anyways, we do draw from that, and the Varna, this new Varna, is a continuation of this evolution of reconciling the religious authority and earthly authority, and it's shared in a way that's I don't want to say inclusive, but that is involves different traditions. So it does, as it abstains from being religious specific. It emphasizes the ethics, and ethocracy, um, and compatibility with different religiosities as a governing structure or governing methodology. And then we are working in learning and practicing the traditional, um, ways of clan from particularly native tradition, native kinfolk of this land, of this continent, because this is an essential thing that is lost within the experience of the modern republic. Individualism and is it's the sense of traditional family and relationship, the Wulun, the five fundamental relations. So we see clan as an optimal, favorable way of rejuvenating and returning within this experience of Wulun and family relationships. So um, that's there's an element of Kohanim in this as well. So all that being said, that's what we see in it. And again, it's not converting. It's not trying to take anybody from their own tradition. This is compatible with the different traditions. But to be honest, what it does involve is what we see is it is an exodus from civilization itself. We can talk about it being a new species of being because it's non-predatory, and we work on the specific mechanics of substantiating that proclamation. But some of the basics is that it's non-violent, it's not initiating violence, it's not imperialistic, it's not letting go of ownership. So even in securing buildings, and additionally, it's a matter of just identifying the conventional methodologies, the legal constructs, to secure safety within a space, and agreement amongst the conventional powers to let it be. And so whatever those paperworks are, but at the same time, amidst that, whatever the paperworks are, the ownership in terms of the context and the framework of those legal constructs is held within one of the entities of that convention rather than ourselves. And there's negotiation off the books or whatever about that. It's not a matter of like trying to hide or trying to do things under the table, but it's just a matter of saying that the conventional power governing this space is not held within ourselves. We are here through the benevolence of an entity in that conventional construct, and through the trust and communication and relationship that we have with that entity, that agency. That is the stewardship that enables us to be in this space. And it might be for a 50-year agreement, it might be whatever agreement, but we go through the means. The agency doesn't have to do all those things itself, but we make those arrangements so that by that point, that is the formal, those are the formal pretenses, within the arrangement. So the land, the entire campus or village itself, and the facilities there are secured through that means. Now, it also involves not utilizing grid utilities, so it's not an ongoing need for the conventional ways of doing things. Independent utilities, and further. And that does require certain further negotiations, but with agencies that are increasingly uh, attuned and supportive of the work that we do, the vocation that we share. So, anyways, it's a migration, but instead of a physical migration in certain ways, it's a conceptual migration away from the constructs of convention, and again, outside of civilization itself, to the point of actually having a mindset of different beings, not better or worse than, but just different. Like deer living in an apartment building and being able to write and make negotiations. So very similar to humanoids and otherwise, but distinct, because not enveloped in the competitions and hostilities of convention. Continuing relations and diplomacy and communication and involvement in trade and negotiation with the different factions within convention, but abstaining from aligning or maligning the different factions either. People having the prerogative of leaving and entering into this methodology. We're working on a methodology wherein people can maintain their conventional status, such that it doesn't require absolute off the grid declaration or determination, so that there's further cooperation. But we have to work on some of those details. So the point isn't trying to like conquer anything. It's not trying to impose any particular law or way of being over anything. It's recognizing a way of being in a law that already exists and attuning ourselves optimally with that, and distancing ourselves from the practices and the policies and protocols that violate that harmonious law. So anyway, that's some of it. That's much of it. That's going to be what it is at this moment. Now let's get into some work and some thinking of the grace, the benevolence, the purposefulness, the providence, the reason, the guidance, the miracles, the balance, the grace of the Most High. We give all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, blessed love and peace in Rastafari.